Right, I'll make it 2 o'clock. We do have a long agenda, which might be even longer if people get what they want, but they might not. So I'll move that we get on quickly and welcome everybody to Family and Children's Services here at County Hall. So, straight in, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, I've received apologies from Councillors Dale, Daly, Phyllis Aitken and from Lynn Houghton.
Okay, any from the floor? I don't see any activity. Right, move on. Minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody wish to raise any wrong items or items that might not be in the agenda here? I see nobody. Yes, Mark Swindon.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify a point, and it's with regards to item 18 on the annual report of Northumberland County Council fostering service. Something I just would like some clarification on, which I think I'm right in understanding, but I've seen something in the media which could confuse the public. So with regards to fostering, when we do foster children, the discussion was around there's a need on occasions for children to be fostered outside of the area, either North Tyneside or sometimes further afield in other parts of the country, for their own safety. Now, that could be with other family members outside the area or a special need. I just want to clarify that point, and it's not that we can't look after our own children. It's because there's a particular need. And I just want to clarify that so that there's no confusion that we just can't look after our own children in this area.
Right, I'll allow that to go through because it's really about accuracy of the minute.
Yeah.
But I am quite lenient and I'll let you get an answer.
Great, thank you.
The technicalities. No, absolutely, that, Councillor. It's not because we can't look after them, it's because that's the right placement for them that we can find. So, and I think that did come out of a Freedom of Information request, which looked over about 10 years, I think, the number of children who have been placed outside of Northumberland. And in response to that, we also gave a lot of detail about the percentage we've got close to children's to their own home addresses and a range of other things that evidenced, I think, good practice in terms of our fostering and placing with families and supporting them in Northumberland in response to that.
Okay. Disclosure of members' interests. I see no hands. Right, move on. Forward plan. Pages 7 to 16. Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. Just wondering if we can get something added into the forward plan, just with regards to some back-to-school issues around school uniform. I've had a number of residents get in contact with me with complaints that they've had issues with the schools regarding school uniforms, about the wrong shade of charcoal, the wrong school shoes, a haircut that the child's had for 2 years now not being suitable for school, shoe inspections within the schools. I just think people are having a really tough time, so this is something that does need addressed, and it goes on, but I think it's something that we need to look at within the forward plan, if possible, please.
Audrey.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ball, just be assured that we will enforce that with our head teachers at the meetings. We'll pick that up, but I'm happy to take any particular examples that you've got and we'll take those forward. It is the responsibility of schools and not the local authority. However, we do provide appropriate guidance, so I'll make sure that's provided.
I will have a conversation with Councillor Wayne Daly and Chris here on what, where and how and if it's possible.
That's great, thank you. Obviously, we do need boundaries, but some of these rules are taken a bit too far. Thank you.
Right, anything else on forward plan? I see no hands. Okay, item 5. Now, is Alan with us?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I see you now. Performance Finance Report, Children's Services. Alan, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and apologies that I can't be there in person. I've got COVID, so I'm at home. This is the 6th monthly performance and finance report for Children's Services, covering benchmarking information for the indicators that are in the service statements from children's social care and also from the Education Service, and also provides the early in-year financial position for the end of June as well. This report was originally due to go to July's meeting, but it was deferred, so I've updated it with the end of June information, so it does have the up-to-date information. In terms of the headlines coming out from the report, it does provide a positive picture overall in terms of performance within children's services. So, for example, we can see within appendices A and B the positive performance around early help services and the contribution that they make to positive outcomes. Good outcomes in terms of suitable accommodation and improving outcomes around education, employment and training for our older care leavers as well. And also within education and skills, it shows it reflects the improved performance around Northumberland schools regarding Ofsted inspections, the continuing positive performance around early education entitlement for 2-year-olds, and also around the families receiving the first choice of school, both in terms of primary and secondary, where Northumberland continues to be significantly ahead of the national average. The report does make reference to some of the challenges that we face around staff turnover, particularly with regards to social workers, increased case complexity within the world of social work, placement stability and sufficiency regarding our children who are in care, and also on the education and skills side, we have seen an increase in the number of permanent exclusions from schools, and also we've got a more recent challenge regarding the timeliness of delivering education and healthcare plans, but that is within the context of that being a national picture, and we know that within Northumberland families do receive education and healthcare plans quicker than is the case nationally, but the increase in demand has had an impact on that recently. I think those are the headlines really from the report, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Yes.
That's it. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of positives about the report, but one of the things that just stands out for me was the proportion of the secondary schools judged good or less than good or outstanding. You've given the percentage, but in reality, how many children or students does that equate to? And the other question is, how many students or children have we had that have literally gone from a school less than good at the primary sector into a secondary school less than good? In other words, potentially going through their entire school career in a school less than good, because those numbers are still quite high.
Alan?
Okay, yes, thank you. In terms of the answer to the second question, I would have to take that away and actually look to see what the figures were. Mm-hmm. With regards to your first question, the actual figures that are within the report, that's in Appendix B, that is the actual percentage of children?
Yes,
that is the percentage of pupils?
How many does that actually make in terms of hundreds or potentially thousands? Right,
I see. In terms of that, I do actually have access to those figures, and I can get them for you in the space of a minute. If it's okay, Chair, I'll find those figures now. I don't know if there's any other questions that are arising, but I can provide those figures within a minute.
Okay, well, I've got another question coming, so I'll take that if you can listen and find.
Will do.
Councillor Ball.
Yeah, it's just with regards to page 23, 6.2, the 1.186 million forecast overspend. Obviously, we are going through challenging times. I'm just wondering what the impact that is going to have going forward. And obviously, we're seeing all these other costs increasing in time. So just what impact is that going to have?
Audrey?
Happy to take that, thank you, Chair. That is entirely related to the home to school transport increased costs, both forecasts. We have backdated the payments that we make on travel and also on our transport. An 8.9% increase is being given to providers. That means that we have secured the transport providers, so the impact in terms of keeping the providers we work with and getting our children to school safely I believe has been secured. We haven't had a drop-off of contracts, which was likely to be the case once petrol rises were increasing rapidly, and it was beginning to have an impact upon operators. That financial overspend has been secured through budget, so I've taken that through as a budget overspend, and I will be obviously calculating the impact in future budget years for 23-24, so we're making sure that we're building that in and being really realistic. If anything, it would hopefully be over-profiled if there is then a reduction in fuel prices. It purely relates to that.
I think we're going to find a lot of this everywhere where fuel has, going to play a big impact. Alan, can I go back to you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I found those figures in terms of the percentage of pupils. So the actual figure in Northumberland for the secondary schools, the percentage of pupils in secondary schools judged just be good or outstanding. 72.7 is the figure in the report, and that equates to, obviously it does fluctuate month on month, but that tends to be between around 16,600 to around 16,800 out of a school roll population of 22,900.
Happy.
Potentially 6,000 students are in a school less than good.
Did you hear that?
Yes, I do. Yeah, yes, that is the latest position.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody?
That's rather high.
Yep.
It is a high figure, and it's a key priority, obviously, to reduce the number of schools which requires improvement. There are still many of those learners that you've got will still be achieving good outcomes. Just because the school is judged to require improvement by Ofsted, it's obviously an indicator of the need to improve. But there will still be many learners who attend that school, and many families who are happy for those learners to attend those schools. But overall, it hasn't quite managed to make the grade. There will still be a high proportion of learners that attend there who do very well, though.
Okay. I see no further. Councillor Thompson.
It's not good. Hang on. There we go. Thanks, Chair. And just to add that the direction of travel of our schools, which are good or outstanding, is very positive. We've heard at this committee before that in 2017, 24% of our schools were less than good, and currently it's 12% that are less than good. That's down to the hard work of the school improvement team, which are very well supported by the council, and we're hoping that in the future we won't have any schools that are less than good. Obviously, we can't control our academy schools, but we do encourage them to take part in the school improvement programme that we have.
Okay, I see Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Thompson's just mentioned something there, which I just wanted to pick up on. From those that are less than good, do we know what proportion of those are not under local authority, as in academy status, etc.?
Who's going to answer? Alan?
I don't know that figure off the top of my head. I would need to take that away.
We have a dashboard which shows exactly the figures that you're talking about, so literally inside 24 hours we can get that for you.
Okay, I see no further hands. Can we move on? We note this report. We come to item 6. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Outcome of the consultation on proposals for the corporate partnership. Sue Aviston.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll just highlight some elements of the report, but really I'm sure FACS members will remember that back in May, earlier on this year, you agreed to recommend to Cabinet that we went out to carry out informal consultation on some changes to school organisation within the COCUT partnership, and this report sets out the findings of that consultation. Again, the background in the information is contained in paragraph 6 to 10. I think you'll all remember that the drive behind the discussion around school structures in the COCUT partnership is a result of funding being identified by the local authority to actually invest. And also we did receive requests from all the schools in the COCUT partnership to support this consultation. The consultation itself took place from the 11th of May until the 29th of June. As is our standard practice, we did that within the DFE guidelines. Again, a consultation document was developed, including a questionnaire setting out the background, the rationale and the implications of the proposals, and they were also included within the document, as well as a proposal around growing specialist provision by creating a satellite site for Barndale Special School. The document... Apologies, my thing's not moving. The document itself was circulated to just over 3,000 people. And again, the response to that was quite low. Sorry, it's just not returning. Apologies. But that is probably what we normally expect when communities are agreeing with the recommendations or the detail within the report. So we also held consultation meetings again in all of the schools with the governing bodies and their staff groups. We also held a consultation meeting, public meeting all day on a Saturday on the 11th of June within Amble. Again, detailed breakdown of all the feedback to consultation is contained in paragraphs 27 to 45 of your report, and the full response is also included in the background papers for your information. The governing, and really just to highlight now as well, the individual feedback from the individual groups most impacted by the proposal. So again, you'll see from the report that all the governing bodies from the first schools support the proposal for the reorganisation for their schools to change to primary and for the high school to become a secondary school. And again, that detail is in paragraph 28 to 33 of your report. The governing body of James Calvert Spence are committed, responded to say that they are committed to the current structure, but have also referenced the strengths of their school. However, they've also confirmed that they will support the decision made following this consultation and will work as hard as it takes to make a future model work effectively, whatever that model may be. The governing body of Barndale Special School were also supportive of the proposal, and particularly around working in partnership with the schools in the COCUT partnership and the local authority to develop specialist provision in Amble. And again, their response is referenced in paragraph 36 of the report. We also received individual feedback from the staff within the schools in the COCUT partnership. Around 12% of staff responded individually to the online survey, with 10% of those in favour of primary, and the 2% of them were unsure. Newcastle Diocesan Board also responded to the consultation, where they confirmed that they are supportive of the move to a full primary and secondary structure across the partnership, and they were also supportive of the proposal to develop local specialist provision. The Diocesan of Hexham and Newcastle are also supportive of reorganisation to primary-secondary structure, and their response is contained in paragraph 38 of your report. Pupil view was also sought as part of the consultation, and again their comments are summarised within the report at paragraph 39. Parish and town councils also responded and to say that they would support the community's choice. So while they didn't express a view of their own, they were happy to support the majority view within the community. We did consult over 3,000 people, as I've already mentioned, and as a result of circulating the documents to that number, we received 125 responses to the consultation. From the responses that we received, around 50% were from parents and carers, so they did engage with the process, and around 25% were from staff and governors, and the remaining 25% was from other interested stakeholders. So again, clear representation in those responses that we received from all corners of the community. And of those that did respond, over 92% responded to say that they thought primary and secondary model of education for the COCUT partnership would provide improved outcomes and be sustainable and viable option for schools in the future. 3% of the respondents felt that the current structure would provide outcomes, and around 5% didn't express a view one way or the other. The main reasons given for each of the models and why they were supported is contained in paragraph 42 of your report, but really also to note that there was very clear support to create specialist provision within the COCUT partnership, with around 82% of those that responded supporting the satellite provision. And I think members again will remember the response that we had to the Ponteland consultation and the relocation of Atkinson House. Actually, the response we've received in Amble has been very, very different and a lot more positive around that co-location of specialist provision. The implications, and I won't go through all of them, it's a long agenda today, but you can see the implications of the proposal are set out in paragraphs 48 to 62, and that talks about specialist provision. It talks about the timeline for implementation. Again, September 2024 would be when we would see the first change happen as first schools grow by 1 year group. We've also set out the implications for staff in paragraph 50, and again this describes how the future employment of those staff potentially affected by any reorganisation will be protected, and also it's worthy noting that a specialist provision for Barndale would also create future employment opportunities as we open the new satellite provision. There is, again, around implications, there potentially is a small saving to the home to school transport budget as a result of children staying in their first schools as they become primary for 2 years longer, as well as the opportunity for those children with special educational needs being educated more close to home. One of the other implications is around the building implications, and that's probably some significant change since the last time that I presented a report around the investment in the COCUT partnership. But again, you will see in table 5 of the report that it sets out in detail now the new revised capital budget that we believe will be required to deliver the project as described within your report. So that's an increase up to £36.1 million. Again, the reason for this is the increased costs that everybody's experiencing, but there's also an increased scope across the project as well. So again, there is the inclusion now of a 50-place special school within the proposal, a new build school for James Calvert-Spence. We're bringing in some mobile classroom replacement works that were already identified to be undertaken within the partnership, and we felt that it's much better to put all of that together to create better value for the public first by procuring a larger package of work rather than things going out separately. How the additional costs will be funded are set out in table 6 of your report, and again that identifies the individual grants that we will be using, which total £6.8 million, as well as £2 million savings that we've achieved on another school building project for Astley and Whittrigg. But again, all that detail is set out in paragraph 6. So really just to pull everything together in a conclusion, that we believe that in their responses all the governing bodies in the partnership have shown their commitment to make the change to a new structure if approved for the benefit of the children and young people in the COCUT area, including the governing body of James Calvert-Spence. Although they remain supportive of the current structure, they are committed to make any changes work. Staff groups who responded have also indicated their support for the proposed reorganisation, largely for the same educational reasons as their governing bodies. And while responses from parents and the general public have been relatively low, the responses were overwhelmingly in favour of a move to a 2-tier primary-secondary structure, with 92% of them supporting the proposal. So given the education rationale presented by the majority of the governing bodies in the partnership, Cabinet are being recommended to approve the publication of a statutory proposal setting out the proposals to reorganise the schools in the COCUT partnership to a primary-secondary structure of organisation with effect from the 1st of September 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go open the floor, I'm going to Councillor Renard Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. This represents the next step in our incredibly ambitious school build programme. Members will be aware that we've built new secondary schools in Hexham, Ponteland. Seaton Delaval is en route. This is Amble. The consultation on Berwick has just ended. We've also put significant sums into Hayden Bridge, and I believe we put a lot of money into Bedlington as well in earlier times. No other authority in the North East is doing this. No other authority in the UK is probably doing this. As I had to explain to one government minister, this is not your money, this is our money that we are spending. It is not coming from government grant, it's coming from the council's own funds. And we should be very proud of that. The response from the community has been overwhelmingly positive, which is unusual. A lot of time where you have a 2-tier, 3-tier debate, there is a lot of argument, but it was overwhelmingly in favour, which is no surprise given that the middle school was effectively closed and subsumed in with the high school some time ago. Building a new SEND school in Amble fits in with our administration priorities very neatly. A lot of the children that are travelling to Alnwick to Barndale currently come from Amble, so it makes sense to keep them in their hometown. And I hope that the Facts Committee can support this programme.
Right, anybody? Councillor Watson? No.
Hi, thanks, Chair. I noticed on the 11th of June, obviously, the consultation event was just in Amble, but this covers quite an area. So 15 people attended, and it notes in the report that transport was not taken up. So did we explore why this was? And could another event have been arranged elsewhere with such a low number? You know, we know that communicating in one particular way doesn't always reach everybody in a community, so just wanted to ask that. And the other question that I had was on the funding. I'm just concerned if I was a Seaton Sluice parent, with the funding being that school, obviously overwhelmingly the residents there didn't want the school to move to the Astley site, but we do know that that school needs a lot of maintenance, and we do know that parents have been in that school painting that school recently. So I'm just wondering if that's going to have any impact on the maintenance of Seaton Sluice with the money being taken from there across to this scheme. Thank you.
Sue, I don't know if you can comment on the second one, but that's
yeah, I can if you need me to. Yeah, really. In consultation with all the head teachers and obviously the governing bodies, we felt that running one event on a Saturday. We have done several events over the years. Personally, I've done many public events in Amble and have held them in the schools themselves and had nobody turn up at all. So while you have got a concern about 15, they've engaged a lot more with this process than they have previously. When the age range, well, in effect, when the middle school closed and it became one school with James Calvert Spence, we ran 2 public events and nobody turned up to either of them. So again, what we tried to do was to listen to the head teachers and realise that perhaps bringing transport for everybody. Head teachers were communicating constantly with the community, sent it out probably about 6 times each on their parent mail. Again, if parents are happy with what the proposal is, they're highly unlikely, to turn up an event. We did think that, they might have even just used the transport to have a day out in Amble, but nobody didn't even get on the bus and not turn up to the event. So we do try to take into account different communities' needs and wants when we're planning these events, and we don't have one size fits all. And hopefully, when we bring forward the outcome of the Berwick consultation, as Councillor Renda Thompson has already mentioned, you'll see there's probably a slightly different approach that we'll be taking there because of the size of the catchment area, the number of schools involved. So yeah, we do try to aim to do that. In terms of the £2 million saving from the Seaton Valley budget, I think you might remember again as members that we did set the budget based on 3 schools and all 3 schools coming together on one site. When the decision was made that it was only going to be 2 schools, obviously that funding was earmarked for that project. Seaton Sluice, while you are commenting around its condition, it certainly isn't one of our worst schools in Northumberland. And if there are maintenance projects to be done at the school, there's separate grant funding that we actually use to do that. So again, we are funding a double mobile classroom actually at the school. We were hoping to have that there for this September. Unfortunately, the way the market was, that those prices came in at absolutely astronomical cost. And therefore we have been in there ourselves over the summer, not literally, but contractors, and paying for work to be done on the existing mobile to make sure that that was fit for purpose until we can procure the new one. So the school is not being neglected. This funding is earmarked for major capital projects, not the small maintenance jobs that we've got other capital money for, that we will continue to invest in Seton Slough.
Councillor Thorne.
Chair, very much welcome the proposal. You know, really makes sense to go for two-tier in the COCAT partnership, but also very much welcome the satellite project for Barndale House, especially as, you know, some of our special needs children have to seek education outside. But, you know, in reading the consultation and trying to understand, you know, why people are supporting this proposal, I very much welcome the reasons put forward, you know, tying in with the Key Stage 2, a better age for children to move from primary to secondary rather than first to middle. But the question I wanted to answer was the long sort of timeline, the 2 years. You know, and my question to Sue is, obviously there is building to do and, you know, a lot of organisation, but that 24-month timeline is a realistic one. I notice, you know, one or two people too in the consultation says, you know, can we not do it before? But yeah, thank you.
Yes, certainly, Councillor Thorne. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think we are seeing significant pressure, not only for cost in the construction industry, it's also getting the labour to actually achieve the timeline. And one of the things that has been very clear from the head teachers is they want it to be very well organised, for things to be well managed, and for there to be a smooth transition to the primary, secondary. A couple of the head teachers in the partnership were involved when there was changes in Blythe, and I think that, you know, they've experienced when projects haven't quite been ready at the point of needing to get children into school, and I think they were more relaxed about this timeline. And you're right, the reason behind it is we do need to relocate the current children that occupy the middle school building to then be able to refurbish that building in order that it can take children from September 24. Amble First School itself is on a very constrained site and therefore actually couldn't grow on its current site to become primary, and therefore we need to make sure that the building work and conversion work on the old middle school site is complete before the partnership can convert to primary. It wouldn't feel right to let the other schools convert and leave one school actually as a first school. So overall, that's the conclusion and the recommendation that we're actually making within the report, to make sure that transition is well managed and well supported by the schools themselves. Thanks.
Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. So again, I welcome this. My only concern is the 36.1 million figure. When was this set, and are we expecting any increases with the building cost inflation, everything else? Because obviously we've already seen overspends. Where's this money going to come from if we aren't at a 36.1? Thank you.
Yeah, I think again, as highlighted in the report, what we've done is use inflation moving forward to predict where it will be at the point of actual construction. So it isn't like we've just costed it on today's costs and think this is what it's going to be. We have tried to reflect moving forward what we've experienced and what we continue to experience. And again, not just relying on, you know, the usual indicators that the industry use, but very much getting the intelligence, you know, on the ground from our construction contractors around what they're actually experiencing, and actually building that intelligence into the numbers that we're coming forward with. The other thing that I say that things hopefully seem to be levelling off a little bit within the construction industry in terms of cost. I can't say that's going to continue, and we haven't got a crystal ball, but you know, the projects we've run this summer seem to be levelling off a bit. They're never going to go down. I don't think anybody ever expects that, but we are starting to see a little bit of levelling off, shall we say. Not holding prices of steel for 24 hours. There is a bit more reality coming into the market. as well.
Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you, Chair. This committee's seen a few of these consultations come through now. As the Cabinet member has said, it's very unusual but welcome to see such support for one of these proposals. And I think that's down to officers listening carefully, understanding the situation and meeting the needs of those in that area, that they've come up with a proposal that gets such significant support that everyone can get behind, or nearly everyone can get behind. A couple of things I just wanted to point out. In paragraph 60, it mentions the transport, which you've brought up about the special needs. As an elected member, and I can probably speak for many of my colleagues, when it comes to any changes with regards to schools, transport is a significant issue. And I would ask that if this progresses forward, you think carefully about any changes with regards to local transport provision around schools with regards to parent parking and access for the children. So please bear that in mind with regards to changes and increase in numbers and the issues that that can bring, and what provision you may have to provide around the schools if numbers change. So please bear that in mind. As has been mentioned once or twice, concerns about funding. So it says within the report here that you'll be inclusive of £2 million Astley savings against the budget. When the Astley report came to this committee, it was raised and questioned about the Astley budget. You know, is there enough there with the increase in costs? So I just want to know how confident you are that you've got £2 million Astley savings when we haven't even started on that yet, and with, as you've mentioned, increase in costs, etc. So how do you know you've got £2 million savings in Astley when we haven't even made a start?
Well, let's Sue answer.
Flexible. Yeah.
Yes, so we have sort of started. The planning application's in, it's now going through a process. We're actually completing the detailed design works, and we are on programme to go out to tender in January. So again, there has been another cost review, as there is probably every month on these projects as we developing our designs to make sure it's affordable and deliverable. So yes, I'm confident that we can deliver the £2 million worth of savings on Astley in order to use it here on the Calcutt partnership.
Okay. Okay, Guy, you're going to sum up, and then I'll sum up and put this to the...
It wasn't so much a sum up, it was something I forgot to say earlier, in that the cherry on the cake really for Amble, as alongside this large investment, is their recently published Ofsted report. This week it was published that they've just had a good Ofsted, going up from requires improvement, which is the best result that school has ever had since its formation. So it really is quite transformative. And a lot of that work is down to the head teacher and his staff, and a lot of that work is down to our own school improvement team. Thanks, Paul. A lot of that work is down to our own school improvement team. It is a local authority school, and the guys have been in there working hard to get their Ofsted results up. Right.
We have some recommendations. Because it's a long agenda, I'm not going to read them all out, and I'm going to put them all together. So that's recommendations to the Cabinet, and that's A to F on page 29 and 30. Are we happy to allow those to go forward to the Cabinet? And can I just say that it really is a step forward to get a decent response and not a battle. You know, if you look at the dots, you know, the highlighted bits there, we are extending and reducing rates, etc. To get all that through is a decent bit of work, and we've got to get on with this. So are we happy to take en bloc the recommendations A to F? Yes? Do you want to all vote for that? Are we in favour of that? Just so Guy can take it away. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Okay, you can take that to your cabinet guy. I'm going to on with the agenda. Oh, we are going to go to item 7, and it's Children's Services Annual Representations 21 to 22. And I go to Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, this is the annual representations report. We've got a couple of slides up on the screen. If you can go to the next slide, please. Just in terms of outcomes for the year 21-22, I just wanted to reference within the report. It is a statutory requirement within the Children's Representations Act, which covers the complaint process for children's services, children's social care services. But within our recordings, we do record a lot for education as well. We take complaints and compliments to try and record a balanced view. So we take learning from both complaints and compliments to embed into service practice to make improvements across the board. For this year, we've seen a slight decrease in the number of formal recorded complaints. But we'll put this down to trying to increase management at an earlier stage, trying to achieve resolution at an earlier stage. So a lot of them we do work around at inquiry stage with officers to try and achieve that early resolution. We do receive more formal complaints made by adults involved with the children. The process is supposed to be for the children who are looked after. However, we do tend to get more from the adults. The children and young people tend to find resolution through other processes, which is mentioned within the report. But we do ensure that's all recorded, so we are getting their voice heard within the complaints process. In terms of complaint numbers, we don't necessarily focus on the number received. We don't see that as a negative. Just in terms of how many there is, we tend to focus on the whether they've been upheld, not upheld, partially upheld, and whether the council have been able to remedy them satisfactorily. The timescales for response, they're statutory within that guidance, and we are making improvements around the timescales. We're responding to a lot more within the timeframes that are set out. Again, we're recognising more and recording more compliments. It's something that children's services haven't been as good at as other departments, but we are getting a lot more compliments, which is really encouraging, and we are promoting that culture around the organisation. Just wanted to record the LGO provide an annual letter every year, the Local Government Ombudsman, and the annual letter this year has recorded that Northumberland Council have a positive culture around complaints, around the handling and around the learning from the complaints. So that was a real bonus for this year, a real positive. In terms of next year, if you can move on to the next slide, please. For the coming year, obviously we'll be taking the learning from the complaints previously received and the compliments to embed into future practice, make those improvements. We are going to continue to work to improve timescales for the responses for all complaint stages. We've also got the introduction of a new casework management system this year. It's just on the cusp of being sort of taken forward for development. And that will provide us with much improved recording. We'll be able to provide far more statistical information in the future around data and trend analysis. We are also looking to provide refresher training on complaint investigation and handling across the department to make sure that everything's dealt with and investigated in accordance with the LGO guidance. And that last part, just on the slide there, we are going to be trying to work towards the LGO views to try and make sure that the complaints are prioritised within the children's services side of work. The recommendation for this report is to note and agree the content of the report and to identify if there's any additional areas for scrutiny from the members. So I'm happy to take any questions. Over to you.
Right.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Councillor.
It's not so much a question, just a comment, really. Karen, I see your titles, Complaints Manager. Wouldn't it be nice to put compliments and Complaints Manager and put the compliments first? Because obviously we want positivity about the whole thing, and what the report has been very positive, but I think maybe officially it should be compliments and complaints manager.
Point taken. Graham, can I change my job title?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Councillor Ball, is this a compliment or a complaint?
I always compliment the staff, yeah. Great work. Just wondering, do we do any peer learning working with other councils as well on stuff that, whether it be trends within compliments and complaints that are coming in, but also having them to look over some of the things that might come in and things that might have been good practice and just that information sharing and that peer support as well?
We do attend a regional complaint managers forum. The regional feeds into the national, and there is often seminars and webinars around the learning from complaints, the complaint handling, matters of good practice. We do attend things like the LGO training as well, and it is about sharing good practice across the board for that as well. So yes, we do try to do that. We have, unfortunately, the LGO this year have changed how they report on complaints for other areas. They're doing it just across the board and not children specific. So in terms of comparators, benchmarking comparators, we cannot do it specifically without accessing each local council's data, and we normally got that from the LGO website, but unfortunately the way they've changed it, it's just an overall number and not children specific. But in the future we're going to try and do that through the regional complaints managers forum as well, so we'll have comparators across similar authorities. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, this is to note. Thank you for this report. Hopefully it's a compliment. Right, next one. Item 8. I will be moving things slightly round and you'll understand why when we pass this one. Children's social care. Graham. Pages 119 to 154. Graham, floor yours.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a presentation just to try and take the highlights. Obviously, this is a major document. And this annual self-assessment is required by Ofsted. One part of the Ofsted framework is that we have an annual conversation with them, and this forms the basis of that conversation. So it's an overview of the range of social care activity over the year. And further to that, we also, as part of regional improvement, we have a regional directors challenge which will take place later in the year around our respective self-assessments. So just in terms of the structure and how we've done it, we have got a continuous improvement plan that we work to, which we've reviewed as part of this, and we've tried to structure the self-assessment in itself, taking from learning and previous challenge and discussions with Ofsted, looking at the key areas on things we've done well, things we could have done better. But one of the key areas is the so what question, and trying to detail and evidence at least the highlights of what impact our services have, as well as then moving on to what future actions we'll take. So, but overall, I think, despite the pressures that we've heard about and will continue to hear about around areas of social care practice, so that overall I think there is a positive findings from our self-assessment about the quality and impact of our practice across the piece, but we have got ongoing challenges, particularly around workforce retention and around placement sufficiency, which have been highlighted earlier in the finance and performance report. So I'm just going to go through the key areas and just try and pull out key themes. In the strategic leadership area, this is where we've got to lead and what we want to make sure we're taking into account as leaders in terms of the practice. So over the year, we've certainly seen improvements in the leadership and quality in relation to special educational needs and the children's social care contributions to those. The evidence for that and the impact of these has particularly been around the SEND revisit and the pilot inspection that took place during the last financial year. Recognise the quality in the work undertaken in children's social care, but I will also say there continue to be challenges which I'll come to later in the report in making sure we meet the needs of children, disabled children, particularly around short breaks. Corporate parenting is a member priority as well, and we have made good progress around that, particularly working with our corporate parenting group in terms of member engagement around that, but developing promises across the council and for the range of council services and in wider business as well in terms of what they can offer for our children looked after and our care leavers. So things like work experiences, things like mentoring, things like learning opportunities, a range of ways in which we can, as a council and across businesses, offer that. So that remains a priority for us to keep forward in developing that, and one of the challenges will be evidence and the impact of that, but there has been positive progress in the last year. A couple of things, and there will be other partnership elements I'll talk to later in the presentation, but a real positive has been the implementation of the Northumberland Emotional Wellbeing Support Team, NEWST, which will be referred to, I'm sure, in a later agenda item on the mental health support there. That is 2 psychologists and mental health, emotional wellbeing practitioners located and managed within social work and offering support to social workers. And given the complexity of the needs of some of the young people that we work with, that really is a very positive development. And I'm sure in a year's time, when the team have been in post for a year, we will bring much more detailed evaluation and feedback about that. And similarly, good partnership working with what was the CCG and is now the ICB, health contributions to our placement costs. That is the biggest pressure for us around our placements costs for our children looked after, which continue to increase, and we've managed to maintain those over the last year. And just to make sure we've got an eye on national developments as well, the independent review of children's social care, we've engaged our staff as part of that. I will do a briefing when we have a national response, government response about what they will do with this, which will be later this year, towards the end of the year we'll be getting that. But similarly, there's also been a number of national panel findings around national tragedies and the deaths of children, particularly the ones that came in the last year were Star, Holborn and Arthur Labinjo Hughes. And what we've done is made sure that we've done assurance activity within children's social care and across the partnership around those areas of risk for us to make sure we are doing the best we can to mitigate those risks that learned from those tragedies. We've also got the virtual school of enhanced responsibilities have come into play in that they're looking to not just for children looked after, but trying to make sure and support the education for all children who've had a social worker. And there's a lot of work been going on, working with schools, training and support to schools around understanding that. And also in relation to responding to the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021, we've done a lot of work developing that, and I am the chair of the Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board. And moving on just on the last couple of points on the strategic leadership element, workforce does remain a key challenge, particularly social workforce. This is a national problem and a regional challenge, and I'm involved in both regional and national ways in trying to progress this. But within Northumberland, we have got a range of ways in which we're addressing it, which I've listed there, so links with universities. ASYE Academy, which is our newly qualified social workers, putting those as they come off the training into our employment in an academy for 6 months with particular support, development, training, protected caseloads as far as we can, and then transitioning and supporting their move into our teams, I've got to say is a key for us in terms of growing our own workforce. And I've got to say, for some of the quality of practice activity, which I'll come to when I go out to service areas, and you ask about people's backgrounds, a number of staff now who have come through our academy and are the key element of that is clearly evident. One other way of trying to do that is develop, and in response to need, but also giving opportunities for practice development, is developing specific teams. So we've got a team that does parenting assessments for parents with learning difficulties and learning needs. And we are just about to implement a pre-birth team, again based on analysis of need, where we're focusing on trying to make sure that our work around supporting parents who are having children where there may be risk of significant harm, that we're engaging those very early to make sure that we're doing everything we can to return them safely to the parents, and if not, make sure we look at alternatives for them in a timely way. We've looked at structures within the workforce as well, and also reviewed our administration to make sure that it's focused on supporting frontline practice as effectively as possible. And we also a range of support and development for our staff, for which we do get positive feedback from them. And equally, residential care is also a challenge for us. We've increased the use of apprentices to assist our residential recruitment. Next bit, there's a quality of practice framework. I'm not going through a lot of work, but it's really important for us about how we oversee the quality of our practice in an engaging way with our staff that both recognises good quality practice but also identifies areas for improvement. So we've got a range of ways in which we're doing this, But what we're also doing is trying to make sure there's a whole range of data that we can use as well. But we're trying to make sure that we're focused on them on what I've called there the 5 meaningful measures, which I've listed there, which I think are the key cornerstones of our quality of practice, to making sure we look at our work in those terms, but a range of ways in which we do that. I'm going to just move on quickly to help and protection then, which is the next element of the self-assessment. And I'm going to talk about early help and intervention. And I've got to say, for me, I think our early help and prevention services in Northumberland is a real strength for us. The quality, range and innovative practice that we have there, I think, is particularly effective. And I've just listed a range of the things that we have in place. We've got a very effective first contact service, so when referrals come in, they may be directed to social work. A lot of them will come for early help, but equally what that contact service has done, not just into local authority work, but looks at directing them to the particular partner agencies and a range of ways in which we do that effectively. We've seen Team Around the School pilots, which we will be developing further, which supports schools in how they can support children and young people, and that's been work that's got very positive feedback, and we'll be building on that. Similarly, integrated work on attendance with partner agencies, children's wellbeing practitioner posts within our early help services as part of developing the offer. NFF is our Northumberland Families First service. This is a particular service is targeted at families where children may be at risk of preventing care. And just the effectiveness of that, for those the families they picked up working with, only 14% of them became looked after, and for those families and the children was the right decision. And we will, and the future I've got developing co-location. That is a family hub development, which is a future agenda item later on today, which will give more detail on that. So again, just saying, I think we find very effective work, engagement with children and families very effectively, and that we've also got improved sustained engagement in our most improved areas. So again, just the so what question there showing positive impacts for us. The help and protection. Again, a list of things that we've put in place around signs of safety as our practice framework. This does support us to make sure we're focusing on the areas that we need to focus on, but it helps and supports engagement. So we're doing with families rather than doing to families and children and young people. And what it also does is really effectively support the engagement of wider family and friends in supporting the care for those children and young people. And equally, if they are not able to stay with the parents, they would be the first people we look at to provide the care for them. There is a list of other things that we've looked at for our quality of practice: extra-familial harm, children missing education, elective home education. We've got robust oversight and processes through our virtual school work in terms of making sure those children are safeguarded as well as meeting their educational needs. And I've mentioned earlier the challenge in meeting the assessed needs for disabled children, which I'll come on to in terms of our future actions. So again, there are risks. I've just listed there some of the findings from the range of quality of practice findings. So we will be self-critical where we need to be, but I've got to say overall a range of very positive findings from those areas as well. The next section then is children looked after and care leavers. And I won't go through all of the areas, but again, and the next agenda item may well evidence some more of the impact of what we're doing around the legal work, decision-making and timely processes. We've developed our foster carer recruitment, in fact increased the number and places of children with our foster carers through that. We have been frustrated that we've not been able to build the 2 children's homes as quickly as we would have helped, but we have started the build on one of them as we speak in Pacewood, so that's very positive. We've got a team that specifically works for children who are going to go to adoption. And again, I'll refer to that in the next agenda item in terms of the quality of that work, but that supports effective work transition and understanding for children who are being adopted. The work with schools around children who've had a social worker about understanding trauma-informed practice, and they've also supported children's transitions for our children looked after through in between schools. Again, we'll no doubt talk a bit in the future agenda item, but we have got accessible consultation and pathways for mental health and wellbeing services to support our looked after children and young people, and that is reported regularly into the corporate parenting group. So I'm not going to go through all of the quality of practice there, but just to make sure we're not just saying things are good, that we're evidencing the basis on which we are saying the so what there. So a lot of the information there about where the percentage within a home address, the positive feedback, the enhancement of our foster care and the timely achievement performance, I think are very important for us to see. And the final element is about for our care leavers. Again, the range of work we've put in place there to improve the support and quality for our care leavers. And again, the quality of practice sees that we really are advisors supporting the young people are tenacious and young person-centred, particularly if they're not wanting to engage. We certainly don't give and support them. And actually some very effective figures about the percentage in suitable accommodation. Our EAT figures, we want to work and improve those further, but are better than national and local averages. And again, the feedback from the care leavers is very positive. So I know there's a lot there, but that's the range of work that we've got in children's social care, and trying to pull all those together is important, that we can get the oversight and understanding across the piece, both about areas that we've done well and improvement priorities. And on the last slide, which I won't go through in detail, arising from this are the areas that we are going to inform for our continuous improvement plan that we're going to particularly focus on the year going forward, but that is drawn out of our assessment, our analysis, and also horizon scanning into future, what is coming our way nationally and otherwise. So I will leave it there, so I know there's a lot of information in that, and I'm happy to take any questions.
There is an awful lot. Right, anybody? Scot-free, eh? Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that, as has been mentioned, that there's a significant amount of detail in here with regards to the service that we provide for the children and families across Northumberland. We don't just sit there and rest on our laurels, as it were. We're constantly adapting, constantly self-reviewing, seeing how we can improve that. But it's not just for the service that we provide, it regards our own staff as well. There has been comments made about the staff that we have and recruitment issues. This isn't just about Northumberland, this is about the whole of the country. But what is unique to Northumberland is our academy. And this is something we developed here, and other areas are looking at, or have been looking at how we can, how they can copy us. But one thing that really stood out in this report was the comment, I'm just trying to find the page now, bear with a second. And it was in the, at the start of the report, where you had some highlights, and it said staff surveys. Staff is satisfied with the terms, conditions, culture and working environment, feel supported and are impressed with the training and development offer. Can we blow that up? Stick it on any recruitment that we're going out there with. If that's how our staff feel, then it's something we are doing something right. And when we're going out recruiting, like, we need to let everybody else know that that's how our staff feel.
Can I interject and say at the start of this report there was highlighted about staff retention still being a potential problem, which would fit in with that.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that for the powers that be to...
We certainly do. There's a range of innovative methods that we continue to use for recruitment, and including videos with our existing staff in terms of what it's like to work here as part of that. In terms of that, and just to reinforce the point, all of our quality of practice activity, for example, and a lot of the time, once a month, I and my senior managers will go and sit with staff, do what I used to do with Ofsted, look at the quality of practice and talk to them, and very uniformly we get very positive feedback about the support that they get and the training and development opportunities. So you're right, we do make sure that we maximise that as part of our recruitment. And it's crucial that if we're going to work, our staff are going to work effectively, that it's a shared responsibility, that it's a responsibility it feels as senior managers and leaders to create the environment with which they can work effectively, and that they feel supported to do that. And we do get positive feedback about that.
Thank you. And just to point out, social work is a very challenging role, can be a very challenging role, and it isn't for everybody. So, yes, we do have people that move on to other positions, other roles, other careers, because it isn't for everybody, and it has its ups and downs, and it has its peaks as well. But it can be very challenging, but it can be very rewarding as well.
Right, Mr. Hodgson.
Just to follow on, really, Graham, what's the main reason? Because obviously you have exit interviews, and one of the statistics you said was nearly a fifth in that last quarter were leaving. I mean, there's so many positives, but is there anything that highlights or jumps out from the exit interviews?
There isn't any one particular theme.
Right.
It's a range of things. Some of the movement is within Northumberland and to other posts as well. But there are a range of reasons. Sometimes it's about your families are locating somewhere else.
Yes.
Sometimes people just want to fancy a move, or the career move for them is right, but in another authority. So there isn't one. There aren't real themes coming out of the exit interviews. And I've got to say, it's an ongoing work. I mean, we've just done a whole load of work consulting with staff about, what works well in terms of retention here.
Yes.
What could we do better? And we're just going to try and develop some other ways in which we can respond to what they think would help retain them.
Yes.
So it's
I was
ongoing.
just linking up there, presumably some of your ideas that you want to put into practice would link up with the feedback you're getting from the exit interviews. That was all. Yeah.
With the exit interviews and wider staff consultation and views. Absolutely.
Right. Mr. Lennox.
Just to welcome the report, and I particularly welcome the glossary of acronyms. I find it useful in a comprehensive report like this to have that list available. And looking down the list, I'm curious to see what there is within the report. It's a condition which I've come across fairly recently. It's called ADHD, which means attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I don't know whether, in fact, you've come across that disorder in any particular aspects of your work.
Well, we will have, and I might defer that, if possible, to perhaps a more detailed response in the later item. I'm looking across at colleagues there, but most certainly we do. Part of the assess needs and support.
It just seems to be an increasing area, particularly as a result of the pandemic. Loss of esteem, etc., and all kinds of aspects which have come to the forefront often, in the pandemic era.
I wouldn't be able to give a quantitative or quantitative view, or in terms of looking at the numbers in relation to that. But certainly is one key part. With a high number of the children we would work with would have needs such as those. But again, I think that might be addressed a bit later in another agenda item today as well. Right.
We have a recommendation. I see no further hands. Recommendations are to note the report and identify any areas for scrutiny and clarification. Well, we've done a bit of that. So are we happy to note this? Yes. Right, thank you. And now then I'm going to add in something called 8A, because I couldn't find anywhere to put it on the agenda, but I am moving things around it'll become clear. I'm going to go to Graham, and this is about Ofsted. Floor is yours.
Thank you. I think more recently circulated has been the Ofsted report, and the reason for the late circulation, it was that it was only published on the Ofsted website last week. So again, just reflecting on some of the things I've said in the self-assessment, we had a focused visit from Ofsted at the end of July. This is part of the overall inspection framework. I mentioned earlier that the self-assessment was part of the overall approach of Ofsted with local authorities, where we have an annual conversation with them. The other thing that Ofsted like to do is have an other annual contact with local authorities. We have a judgement inspection theoretically once every 3 years, and our last judgement inspection was in 2020 when we were rated as good. We've had the SEND inspections, which would contribute to that because it sees some of the social care activity as part of this, but one of the key other ways they do it is through a focused visit, where a small two HMIs come and they look at a particular area of practice over 2 days. It's not graded in terms of ratings of good or otherwise, but what we get is the narrative findings for that. So that one is helpful to us in terms of an external view of the quality of our practice, but equally for Ofsted, it gives them a view of where the local authority's at, and if there are some that are struggling that they might need to focus on more quickly, that is what this is used for. So for us, that they came and their focus was how we planned for and achieved permanence for our children looked after. And I've got to say this has been an area that we have been working to improve over some years. So when we got the report and the findings, we were very pleased with those findings, and I think that's reflected in the report. So I think for me the summary does cover all of those. Very pleased to see about the quality of social work practice in terms of how effectively and creatively engaged with and used the experience of children and young people, and some particular very good examples which I referred to about in terms of, for example, children going for adoption, the use of later life letters and life storybooks to help those children understand their history and help them develop their identity positively. Very pleased as well that the management support and direction for those staff were recognised, and that actually we did achieve permanence for the vast majority of our children and young people in a timely way. It was a priority for us, and that we did it effectively. It does talk also about the senior management oversight and the quality of practice, both driving the progress of the plans and understanding and driving the quality of the practice within that. It did identify 2 areas for improvement, which absolutely will accept, because where we can we can do things better, we will do it. A lot of that was about the recording of the impact of what we do as opposed to what we did, which again is reassuring for me. And it was a strength about the impact of our independent reviewing officers, our IROs. And I've got to say, having been an inspector previously, our IRO oversight of practice out with statutory reviews, but in between reviews and understanding the voice and views of the child and making sure they're part of driving plans forward is effective, but we just need to make sure we've evidenced that. And equally as supervision, it's about the quality of recording for it, but we know that our first line managers support our staff very effectively and thoroughly. So the only other bit was, they did say a small number of children have multiple placements or changes of social worker. Some of the delays were out with our control, but that can impact on a small number of children, and that does reflect the national challenges of workforce and placement sufficiency there. But I think we do work hard to mitigate those, and I think the inspectors certainly recognise that. So for me, I think that's a very positive external regulation. I think particularly happy that it does recognise the quality of our frontline practice and our oversight and support for our staff improving the lives for children and young people.
Right. Anybody want to comment on that? I'll ask Mary to come up for your report that's coming next. I think that's good news. We'll take it as good news. Well done. Right. I see no hands, so I'm going to move to follow this in sequence. I'm going to move item 11, Family Hub Development, up to be taken now. And Mary Connor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. As members will remember, I've brought a couple of papers over the last few months in relation to family hubs and the development of those in Northumberland, and members were in agreement for us to move forward with those. We received information in the spring that we'd been one of the 75 local authorities chosen to receive additional funding. And I think I mentioned that when we brought a paper earlier in the year. And we've now received additional information over the summer about what we are required to do to sign up for to be one of those 75 local authorities and to receive that additional funding. And whilst that's a really exciting opportunity, there are a significant number of developments to progress quickly, which we obviously have to commit to. So this paper is really to advise the committee of what those commitments are and to get agreement from yourselves and that you are happy for us to proceed with signing up to those commitments and progressing with that process. As I think I've said previously, we're in a strong position in Northumberland. We've been working towards developing family hubs for probably 12 months. Certainly been horizon scanning around 18 months. So a lot of these developments are underway already. And the findings of our on offer is substantial. There's 4 key areas as set out in the report that we're expected to kind of meet minimum expectations around. So those are parenting support, relationships and perinatal mental health support, early language and infant feeding. And all of those are aimed at under 5s, although the actual family hub model is a 0 to 19 or 0 to 25 for children with SEND model, and we're committed to developing the model for that full age range, which links to the next paper that I'm going to talk to. The funding that we're receiving is linked heavily to those areas, with some transformation money. So it's quite prescriptive in terms of how we have to use the money, but it does give us some real opportunities in terms of development and working with partners to be innovative and to further integrate our services. We are also obviously committed to requiring to do the other things that are listed in the report in terms of the expectations and sign up from various bodies, which we are in the process of doing that. So to progress that, the paper has already been to execs and to informal cabinet and to Health and Wellbeing Board this morning for agreement and commitment, all of which has been received. Engagement and commitment has been sought from partners and from MPs as well. Again, really positive from all of those. As I set out, obviously the issues to kind of move us forward are listed in terms of the different areas, and we're I suppose asking from this committee's perspective to for your agreement to proceed and to kind of support the development of those areas, particularly around the governance and those wider process issues that we need to move this forward. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Dunbar.
Can you use your
Microphone, please.
Yeah, I think family hubs are brilliant. I think it's really good, and it's a good initiative, and I'm really supportive of it. Totally, I think it's something that's needed in other areas. I've got one question, and it's been burning for ages, and now I've got the opportunity to ask it. I've been following on Facebook all your presentations about the family hub in Blythe and all the activities that are going on, and I think it's great. Am I right in thinking that the hub in Blythe also caters for Cromlington as well?
Yeah, so the family hub locality in the Blythe area is actually the southeast locality, so it covers across the whole of the southeast area. We've got 2 buildings in Blythe, but the whole development of the family hubs it's not just about building bases, it's actually about activities being across that across the area.
Outreach area. That's what the question that I was concerned about was that maybe if it's all sort of centred in Blythe, would people who could benefit for the support, would they travel from Bedlington or Delaval or Cromlington to Blythe? And some areas are difficult to negotiate, transport.
Yeah, I mean, Bedlington's in our central locality, and we have a building in Bedlington, so there is that is slightly separate. But in terms of the southeast locality, we have a range of outreach provision that goes out and works with families individually who need it, but we also have groups and activities that are happening in different places within different areas. To obviously mitigate for the fact that we don't have buildings in those areas as well. And that, again, is part of the ongoing conversations. So as part of the implementation group, for example, we've got representatives from libraries on that. We've got representatives from the BCS. We've got communities together on that. We're working really closely with the Cramlington Hub around how, some of the activities that they're delivering and how, we can either add value to that or direct families to those as well. So it's about real integration in working, not just about being one building based.
Brilliant. I'm ecstatic. Thank you. Good luck with it all. I think it's fantastic. Thank you.
Well, I've got 2 more indicators. Look like a dead heat, so I'll go ladies first, being a sexist. Caroline
I'm
Ball.
assuming that you're calling me a lady there. Thank you, Chair. Right then, so obviously the family hub model overall I agree with, but I do have some issues surrounding it as well. One being that a lot of them are already children's centres, so they're not actually bringing anything new. So I want to know that some of them are in areas where there is long-term issues. What are these family centres going to be doing any different than the children's centres or the share start centres before that are actually going to tackle them issues? How long are they going to be open in evenings, weekends? Because I think obviously we've got the key groups that are going to be working with from basically birth upwards. How's that space going to be managed? Because if you've got youth clubs going on, or the space being used for sexual health and C cards, things like that, but also somebody wanting to access support, how's that space going to be managed? So these are just some of the concerns that I have. Also, I'm just wondering, during the winter months, obviously we're hearing about these warm hubs. Will they be open as well for that? And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of your first point, yeah, no, totally get that. Obviously, we've got buildings already and we're already delivering children's centre services. I mean, we've been, I suppose, morphing towards this over the last probably 12 months in terms of bringing partners in. So we already have, say, for example, midwifery. We have midwifery based within the Ashington building. We have midwifery now based in the Blythe West building, delivering clinics out of there. We've got, as we've reopened buildings after COVID, we're moving primary mental health services into a number of the buildings. We're looking at moving more health visitors into some of the buildings, but it's not just about people being based in buildings all of the time. It's about actually how that they can come and work from there and integrate from there more. So we've been talking to education services about how some of the specialist education services can hot desk more out of those buildings. Had a conversation this week with housing about, is there ways in which we can look up with some of our support officers in housing about them using that more. We've already, started some work. You're absolutely right. We do need to think about how we use these spaces, and I'm chairing a group at the moment looking around the culture of co-location and about how do we make sure that people understand, we've got a finite number of space in buildings, so how do we make sure that it's used to the best of its ability? Again, you're absolutely right around evenings and weekends. We've got some really good examples where we've got VCS organisations now. So we've got one example on a Sunday, VCS organisation use the space, and that's open for families who come and attend that, and we will certainly be doing more of that, and we will be looking to how we run more of services both delivered by ourselves and partners in evenings and weekends, because it's very clear that this agenda is not a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday offer. It's very much a kind of a real wraparound offer as well. But like I say, and it's not just about the buildings there themselves, it's about what goes on an outreach basis, what goes on in other community venues. And part of this is about developing and creating better links with the community and voluntary sector organisations and the assets we have in communities who are already doing a lot of that and are already wrapping around those families when statutory services and the more formal services aren't available.
Quickly, if I can just come back on that, can we just make sure that these family hubs stay in informal space as well? So it's not just the formality and they become somewhere you go and see the council, the social worker, support services, because I think that outreach, the community development stuff, the sitting down and having a cup and having a moan because you've had enough, there needs to be that element, needs to be within there as well, and not become just somewhere where you go and see the council or fill in a form or get that extra support. But sometimes that informal session as well is as important as anything else that comes on the back of it. Thank you.
No, totally agree, and would welcome you coming and having a visit to one of the children's centre buildings as they are now, so you can see how welcoming and they've really sort of been developed to be very welcoming, open spaces for families, and that's the feedback that we get. So more than happy for anybody who would want to visit either their local or any of our current buildings to see what the spaces are, because I get it's hard to visualise sometimes.
Okay, Mr. Hodgson.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Mary. First of all, I read through it. It doesn't state exactly where the locations of the hubs are across Northumberland. Obviously, you mentioned 2 or 3 of them there. And the other thing is, you know, let's hope and pray that they are a real success and make a difference to families. But what happens when the funding runs out? Is there a commitment from Northumberland County Council to maintain that 3 million plus forever and a day?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. So in terms of the buildings, I think you might remember that previously when I brought a paper about family hubs, I said that essentially what we're doing is morphing our children's centre buildings into family hub spaces. So in terms of the buildings themselves, those 15 children's centre buildings that we have across the county will become family hubs and will be rebranded as that. And then obviously we will work with partners about other spaces that we can use. In terms of the funding, it's a really good question, and you know, it's a question that's obviously been asked of from local authorities of national government around. Actually, by the time we get the money, it's actually 2.5 years' money, so you know, so what does it? One of the things that's kind of beholden on us as officers and across the partnership is to look at how we best use that money. So, you know, some of this is about looking at how we try things out and evidence impact and see how we do things for maybe differently or more smartly or more in a more integrated way for the future, so that we make best use of the resources that we've got. You know, we still have a very good commitment to our early help services in Northumberland, and there's a real commitment across the partnership to early help. So I think we've got a real opportunity to use this money to, you know, to kind of develop and try things out that we maybe haven't been able to do previously, and use it as part of kind of a system transformation approach, really.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. Mary, I think last time I was concerned a little bit about the Blythe West Centre, so you've just mentioned it there. So can you clarify, is that going to be a partnership centre? Because that was one of my worries, that things would be pulled out of there and into
and I couldn't give you an answer last time. I mean, so where we stand in terms of the Blythe West building is that we've got agreement to rent that till at least the end of March, and then we're currently negotiating with Bernardo's in terms of after that. But there is a commitment from, obviously we've set out what we would want in terms of commitment going forward, and there is a commitment from Bernardo's as well that they you know, want to work with us to try and deliver that. But we've certainly got a short-term solution from that. So you know, in terms of that building being available, that will continue post the beginning of October.
Right, we have 2 recommendations to agree to proceed with the funding of the Family Hub offer. Are we happy with that? And to support the development of the governance and wider processes to underpin this. And I presume we're happy with that as well. Okay. Move on to the next item, which is number 9 on your, which is proposal in relation to future arrangements for the youth service. Mary again.
Thanks, Chair. So the reason I'd asked for this to be the agenda items to change around, because one follows on from the other, and you'll probably see how they logically make sense. Again, as your members will probably remember, we did a restructure of the youth service back in 2018, and we changed the kind of the structure of the activities that the youth service were going to deliver as a result after it moved into Northumberland Adolescent Service. There were changes in the management arrangements in the youth service last year as a result of kind of personnel leaving, and emerging from the pandemic as well. We felt that a further review was timely to see how much we'd achieved from that original change management process and the review back in 2018. So the current interim manager and the senior manager conducted the review with the activities that are set out in the paper in terms of how they did that. As you possibly remember, there were kind of key elements linked to the objectives of the 2018 review, which were around supporting the early help offer, but then also developing and delivering a more targeted support for young people across Northumberland, and also implementing a grow your own model in terms of supporting the VCS, who work with a lot of our universal young people or young people who've got relatively low level needs, running groups in their communities, and you know, those are a lot of the groups that young people access and feel comfortable to access. But what was clear really was that hadn't happened as we'd envisaged, and that's obviously set out in the report. And I think what the managers felt from the review really was that this wasn't the current structure as it's set up isn't going to allow for that development to progress in its current form and make best use of the resource that we have in the youth service. And I think that, coupled with the family hub developments, the fact that we really want to develop a locality-based 0 to 19 service linked with the assets in the community, working closely with the voluntary and community sectors, has led us to feel that option 1, as set out in your paper, is really the best option for us going forward. It also fits with the kind of corporate priorities around addressing inequalities and with using the asset base in communities to support those addressing those inequalities. And so for that reason, really, we would recommend that we progress with that. I would be clear that at this point what we're not talking about is any reduction in the resource that's in the youth service. We're talking about moving that into the localities to work under the auspices of the family hubs and to enable that then to be more targeted and focused and working closely with the other partners and parts of NCC Early Help Services who are already in those family hub offer, and to create better join up and support for families and young people in those areas.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Watson?
Town Council where there's been a real issue at the Keel Row and Blythe over the weekend with a lot of youths gathering, and it created the centre to be closed. So I'm just wondering what outreach work Youth Provision will have.
We do have some outreach work. It varies in different areas, so and it does depend on what's available through the local VCS. So for in Blythe, for example, obviously they've got the Silks Youth Project to deliver a lot of youth services, and so the youth service will work closely with them around who's best placed to deal, to sort of support young people, because a lot of the young people do access Silks. So we do have outreach. It does vary, and it does depend on kind of where the needs are really. But yes, we do have outreach that happens. No. It is. We do have outreach within NCC, but like I say, it just depends on. We try and work with the VCS in each area to try and identify where it's a finite resource, obviously. So it's about trying to make best use of the resources and also using the resources that the young people are most likely to engage with.
How many full-time equivalent?
I wouldn't be able to give you an answer to that off the top of my head. I can come back to you with it.
Thank you.
Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. So I have a number of concerns about this, because it appears to me that we're basically bouncing our youth services to the voluntary and community sector completely and passing the buck for young people in Northumberland that deserve better. So we've got young people that are exposed to risks already, and by the time they're reaching the support services, they're already a crisis point because they're not getting picked up, they haven't got access to youth clubs. The voluntary and community sector are already under strain from funding cuts, the costs of building are going through the roof, and they're being overstretched because local parish and town councils are funding them and actually all need them to work at the same time on Fridays, Saturday evenings when the young people are out and about. So to me, this does seem that we're bouncing across to the voluntary and community sector who are already under stress. We're saying that it's going to go within these family hubs. I've already expressed that concern about the share space and how they're going to work together. And I just think youth work and frontline delivery is really about them first interactions as well, whether it be your youth club at 12 and building them relationships with a youth worker. And if we're not going to have them, we've cut back to the bone. We've had years of austerity, and it's impacting children and young people in Northumberland. So this model, for me, it's not going to work, and especially when the community and voluntary sector are already on the bones and relying on volunteers to deliver for our young people. And I think we need a better approach than this, than hoping for the best, that the voluntary and community sector are going to keep on picking up the slack, and we say, oh, well, it's not our responsibility anymore. The young people of Northumberland are our responsibility, and I think they deserve better. And we're seeing more people with eating disorders, and by the time they're reaching crisis point, it's too late. So we really need to look at this and come up with a better approach, because for me, us having somebody that is working in conjunction with the voluntary and community sector to try and get funding, the voluntary sector already have people doing that job and they're already struggling. So I just don't think it's bringing anything extra to the table, and I think the young people in Northumberland long term are going to suffer, and we're going to see costs increasing for long-term interventions, because people are at crisis point by the time they get picked up because they've been missed by youth workers who've run youth clubs, etc.
Sorry, can I just say, I absolutely understand that, but I think, so, I mean, I'm sure Graham will want to give a response, but just, I actually think the opposite. So I think that by moving into family hubs, what it does is it actually joins up the range of provision that we have for young people in a much more integrated way. So then you've got your youth workers, because we're not talking about changing what they do out there in terms of the provision that they currently deliver, but what we will have is them based in buildings with early help family workers who are working with these young people and their families, with primary mental health workers who are seeing them because of their mental health support, with midwives and health visitors who might be dealing with younger siblings in families, with other professionals who are coming into those buildings. They might not be delivering the youth clubs will continue to be delivered where they are. We're not talking about all the provision being in those family hub buildings. What we're talking about is by moving the youth workers themselves and the staff into those buildings, integrating how they work much more with the other provision in the localities that they're working with. They're already working across those localities, but what they are, because they are based with a centrally based service which is more aimed at more specialist targeted young people, they're actually not integrating as well as they could be with some of those services who are working with those young people at the first level when they first come to people's attention. And what we want to do is, by putting them in the family hubs, is actually improve that. And then in addition, look at how we can support and work with the voluntary and community youth sector to make sure that we fill in the gaps where we need to, and how we support them in things like funding, because they actually have more flexibility in things like funding grants than the local authority will ever do. But how can we support them with that to make sure that what we're doing doesn't overlap and that we are identifying need, because that's part of the whole development of the family hubs, is about how we all use our information across the partnership to identify the young people who need it most as early as we possibly can. So I think actually by putting the youth service into the family hub model, then actually what we do is support that integration and support them identifying which young people need that help the most and making sure they get to them as early as they possibly can.
Okay.
Just for me, as I say, youth work, it shouldn't all be about that intervention point, it should be about prevention as well. And I think we're skipping that stage. And I really think we need more investment in the young people. And I think this model does need looked at again, because we can't rely fully on the community and voluntary sector when they are under such financial strain already. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. As has been said, this is all about prevention. The big benefit of the family hub model is you avoid duplication and you have all of the levers of the public sector in one place. And if we put the youth work into the same place, they're not going to be repeating themselves. Our money can go further. Also, by putting the youth service in with the family hubs, the youth service can access the three and a bit million pounds that we're getting from the government. If the youth service stays separate to the family hubs, then they don't get access to that funding. So there is that aspect as well. But no, I think it makes perfect sense to have all those different services under one roof, and then they can talk to each other and make sure they get the best outcome for the individuals. But you are right that we need to be preventative, but I don't see why you're saying that this isn't a preventative service, because that's the whole idea of it.
Is because the kids are already at crisis point. Sometimes we need them interventions way before, and as I say, the community and voluntary sector are already under stress. They are fighting tooth and nail against each other to get funding in. So I just think, again, This is not the right model for the children and young people of Northumberland. We need, a lot of our youth workers are actually, they're not out delivering frontline youth work. They are at the intervention stage. We need people turning around going, you're right, Derek, or you're all right, Paul, out in the parks, because it does help with youth disorder. It does help with that early intervention. It's that information about the Project X stuff that was happening over the weekend. Some of that come from youth workers from the community and voluntary sector that have been funded through short-term projects. If them short-term projects aren't being funded, you wouldn't have that intervention. You wouldn't, you know what I mean? So people are falling through the net, and actually the children and young people in Northumberland are suffering because by the time they reach crisis point, it's too late, and it's going to cost more money in interventions to help them young people. And I understand it's great having these services all under one roof and working together, but sometimes actually having a music night, a bands night, finding out what that kid's passion is could be the difference in that kid's life long term. And I just think there's so many things with this. Even looking at setting up an arm's length organisation that is specific for youth work, because originally it was meant to be within active. Why can't we do that? Why can't we look at it, like looking at funding and setting up our own youth work model, including things like actually training youth workers within Northumberland, having the best service. And instead of turning around and say, leave it to the community and voluntary sector, it is very important that this stays within our remit, and children and young people within Northumberland stay within our remit and on the radar, because they are very important.
I've got Graham wants to come in.
Yeah, and I think obviously part of this will be evaluating the effectiveness of what we do, which we'll have to prove there. I've got to you know, I would support Mary. I think this is the most effective way that we will use the resource that we have. In terms of that, and I do think it fits with the inequalities work that's going on in terms of overall working with maximising the community, supporting the community assets as well. Don't disagree with some of the points you're making about the point of engaging with young people, but that can be done in a range of ways, and I think the model that we've got here will give us the best opportunity with the available resources we've got to be able to maximise that most effectively. And I think, you know, the points are right, we can take the challenge, but I think equally the effectiveness of what we do, we'll have to evaluate that in terms of justifying the funding that we're getting anyway. So that, but I think the point also is that there are a range of other funding opportunities that we know about, and supporting the voluntary and community sector to get those, and what happens in the future will be a challenge, I'm sure.
Right, we've got recommendations that members note the activity which has taken place during the review, that members agree moving forward the most effective way of delivering the Northumberland County Council Youth Service is through a locally based and model based on through family hub arrangements. And 3, that members agree the delivery of most community-based youth service groups is best done through VCS-led organisations. Now, I know someone not happy with that, but that's what's in front of us today. Can we move on with that? I know you've made your point. Okay. That's okay. Are we, the rest of us, happy that we move forward with this?
Chair, with option 1.
We're
There's
going to take all
options at the
three.
back in the recommendations.
Recommendation number 1,
Yeah.
recommendation number 2, and recommendation number 3. Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mary. Item 10. Meeting the mental health needs of children and young people in Northumberland. And this is a double act. I've got Sam Barron and Shirley May. When you get settled, the floor is yours.
Of the information from all of the services, so I'm not going to talk through all of that because you'll have had an opportunity to read through that. I think the first thing I wanted to respond to was the ADHD query, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Just to quickly, I don't know the exact figures for Northumberland, but it's 3 to 5% of the childhood population have a diagnosis of ADHD. And in Northumberland, the diagnostic pathway is delivered by SIPS, the Children and Young People Service at CNTW. And there is a parent group that runs afterwards for families where there has been a diagnosis of ADHD. I'll address the report now. What I thought that I would do is actually just talk about the key issues which we're facing at the moment, and then some of the key system strengths that we have, and then we can take some queries around the contents of the report. The key issues are about accessing the right support at the right time, and that is a challenge when we have an increased demand for support. This increased demand for support was rising pre-COVID, and it's continued to rise because of COVID. Well, I'm saying because of COVID, it's one of those things that is highly likely, but there's not a direct causal link that anybody can prove at this point in time. There's the pressure of trying to deliver specialist services alongside delivering early help and early prevention and support services. And then, as Graham has alluded to earlier, the staff recruitment and retention issue also figures within supporting children and young people with mental health services. What you've got in your report are details around different services that deliver support at different stages of the graduated approach. So that's from the preventative stage right the way through to the receiving ongoing help. It's not all of the services. There are other services out there that deliver mental health support, but these are the main ones. And in terms of talking about some of the key system supports, we do have all of those challenges, and we have some of our waiting lists are under pressure. But I think it's really important to acknowledge some of the strengths that we've got in Northumberland. We do have a strong culture of collaboration around commissioning and planning, around meeting the needs of children and young people with mental health needs across the partnership. Our waiting times remain strong within our Children and Young People Service at CNTW and are the lowest in the North East. We've got a robust offer within our schools. So schools have a post called the Designated Mental Health Lead role. And we have mental health support teams that are promoting early identification and support. And we do have specialist advisory teachers that provide support to schools on meeting needs. What I would say is that has placed us in a good position to be able to deal with this increase in demand, but it is still a challenge at times. So I don't know, I'm happy to take any questions or queries.
Any questions? I'm looking around. Yes, Christine Dunn.
How long is the waiting time? You mentioned there's a waiting time. So.
For which service? Hopefully in the report, each of the services I've detailed the waiting times and how long it takes. Now this report was written back in July, so it has changed a little while.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Ball.
Just a quick one regarding the COOF online resource. What's been the take-up of that, and is there any areas where it's getting used more or less, and is there any kind of learning and being able to promote that more widespread as well?
It's difficult for us to tell the geographical take-up because obviously it's online. The graphs at the bottom of page 3, I'm afraid, I don't know what page it is in your pack, should show you the number of logins that there have been per month and the number of unique service users accessing COOF. So you can see the pattern over the past year has been on a gradual, I suppose it's risen slightly since the beginning of this year. And some of that is, there's always a need to continue to promote COOF across our schools, and it's something that regularly goes out on the e-courier to our schools and reminder to head teachers and SENCOs around the availability of the resource.
Anybody else? No, I think we're done. We're happy that the recommendations note the content, recognise the support now on offer for children and young people in Northumberland. Note future plans and identify any further issues for consideration if appropriate. Are we happy to move on and accept that? Thank you. Back to the agenda. We've done item 11, so we go to 12, which is the work programme. Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Just two things to note on the work programme. The first one is that the school transport governance arrangement that was due to come on in October has been deferred to November. And the care proceedings and public law outline is on the work programme twice. It's on for October and December. It's actually coming in December. And obviously we'll take Councillor Ball's point about school uniforms in Order in Isle, find a place to put that. But as always, if members have anything they want to add, they just need to either speak to me or the Chair.
I see no hands. Right, urgent business. Well, I think we've covered it all.
Just got a response to one of the questions we asked earlier, and I didn't have the data in front of me.
Yeah.
So there was a question about academies and maintained schools and the proportions of learners that are there. The almost an even split in terms of good and better schools. So of those pupils who attend an academy, who have their last recorded Ofsted inspection result, it's 79.7% of pupils attend a good or better school, as judged at the last inspection. Some of those inspections were quite a while ago, because the inspection process is restarted. If an academy comes into action, they've got a couple of years to get going before the inspection takes place. And it's almost exactly the same figures for the maintained schools. So of the maintained schools right across Northumberland, it's 80.5% of pupils attend a school which is good or better. That equates overall, in fact, possibly to Mr. Hodgson's point about numbers, 36,000, in the region of 36,000 learners in Northumberland attend a good or better school. It's 8,000 attend a school which is not currently judged by Ofsted to be good or better. But I would note that, like I said, some of those inspections for our less than good schools are historic. So as an example, one of our schools with a less than good judgment is currently their unvalidated results, but the result is something along the lines of 73% of learners have passed their maths and English GCSE, and that would be above, that is predicted to be above the national average. So as an example, even some of those schools that are not at the grade we would wish them to be at yet are actually achieving better than some of the schools that are at that grade, actually. There's tons of ways of splitting the data, and I'll be happy to go through any bit of it with you later.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Are you quite sure? Right. Councillor Lennox.
I'd just like to compliment you, Chair, on your handling of the meeting today. When I looked at the size of the pack, I thought we were going to be here a long, long time. And,
well, I think I was expecting 5 o'clock, but
yes, I thought the same. And I think you've done it in record time. Thank you.
It's a habit I'm not going to get out of very quickly, I tell you. Right. Thank you for your attendance, and we'll see you whenever.